We all know David Washington as being the magnificently talented director here at our center, music director, as a fantastic musician in his own right and songwriter. What you may not know is this. He started his journey in New Thought back in the Unity Church in the 80s in Huntington, New York. He also at that time started to sing with the New Thought group. He is an ordained minister in the Emissaries of Divine Light. He lived and worked in their retreat center for several years, and that's located in California. He's been involved with the men's work since the mid-90s, and many of you can resonate with the Mankind Project. He has taught numerous classes and workshops, and without another piece of information, I give you the Reverend David Washington.
Oh my goodness. What a gift it is to be here this morning. Thank you, Tricia. Where are you? There you are. Thank you. Isn't it wonderful to see someone show up in love, expressing love, being loved? What a wonderful flow and experience that is. I'm so happy to be here this morning for this celebration, which is all of that, continually. And I think that that's what we're called to do every day as we go through our lives. So as I'm introducing all of this and thinking about it and getting settled, because I've never been up here before, but I'm really happy to do so. I don't know why Barbara chose me, but she did, and it gave me an excuse to put on a suit. You know, and I'm not my suit, but I like wearing a suit once in a while. And I just want to mention that, you know, as I talk this morning and bring whatever it is I bring, I have about an hour and 15 minutes worth of material. We'll see how it goes. It's always an adventure to see what actually comes out of one's mouth. Because when Barbara invited me, I went home, I thought about it, I said yes. And of course, things started flooding in. And I knew from experience that most of that I'm probably not going to use, but it was Spirit's way to calm my mind and say, listen, David, you have this covered, I got you. You know, don't worry about it, it will all be there. So we'll see what actually happens. And as is so often the case, we speak in metaphor, we speak in illustration, but the real action is the flow of spirit that happens with all of us being in one place at one time in one accord. And I don't mean a Honda. Being in one place at one time in one state of consciousness is powerful. And while we may come into a center like this or a church or any place regularly to hear something, it's really to participate in the current of spirit that ultimately is what makes the change within us. So I'll tell some stories and speak in metaphor and all of that stuff. And some of it may resonate and some of it may not, but the current of spirit is what actually resonates. And all of these metaphors and illustrations are limited. They exist in time and space while they simply point to the infinite, which there's no way any of my words can surround. The finite cannot surround the infinite. It just doesn't work that way. But we can have an experience of that because that's what we are. So, to continue, if you would, let's just take a breath. And let whatever is, you can take another one, whatever is happening in your world, if there's a pain in your body someplace, just let it be there. If there's a concern about finances or the judgment being served, they'll wait until after the service. But in this expectant moment, we are just being with ourselves. Being. So my topic today is Wonderful Radiant You. And I chose that topic because I could go almost anywhere with it, and it happens to be true. And Wonderful Radiant You starts with what I call the wow factor. The wonderful one within, which we so often talk about. For some reason, there's an old saying that nothing brings the mind to focus like the possibility of, not the best illustration, the possibility of something terrible happening in the morning. But in getting ready for this, I was listening to the meditation and the treatment that was offered this morning with particular ears, and it's all in there. Everything I need to know to have a wonderful experience was in the treatments that were offered this morning. Every single thing. It is about the wonderful one within. The one that is all things. The one that is the source of who we are. I was reading the Science of Mind magazine, and I noticed that in every month there's a section in there by Ernest Holmes that says what we believe. We believe this, we believe so on and so forth. It's beautiful. If you don't have a subscription, get one or pick one up in the bookstore. It's wonderful. But I was reading it the other day, and I said, okay, so this is what we believe as the practitioners or whatever it is we do in Science of Mind, whatever our role may be. But what do I believe? And more importantly, what do I experience? Because at some point we need to get beyond belief into another state of experience. Belief is a perfect starting point. Better to believe the truth and step on from there than believe something that's not true. The truth of the matter is there's only one presence and one power. Every treatment starts there. And then it goes on to describe the qualities of that one presence and power, that one being. And how I and you and all that, everything in fact, is an expression of that. But what's my experience of it? So belief is a good place to begin. But my emphasis this morning is on experience. There was a book written probably back in the 70s called The Gnostic Gospels by Pagels. I can't remember. Elaine Pagels. Loved it. And apparently this particular group called the Gnostics believed and practiced this thing of knowing, which was essentially experience. It's not enough to preach the word. You actually have to live it. You have to be it. You have to let it become who you are. And as I think about this, what it actually calls to me is that the sense of self that I have that is so-called normal is just the shadow of what is. In some ways, I need to let the sense of small self dissolve, melt away, shift. My primary identity, the way I primarily think of myself, is shifting. So I don't want to say needs to or must, because the process is happening. It's happening for me and you and the entire world. Coming into an experience, first an understanding, a belief, but then an experience that we are way larger than who we appear to be. That is a fact, that we are way, way, way larger than who we appear to be. Here's a couple of examples, a couple of illustrations. Typically, a baby is 7, 8 pounds, maybe a big baby is 9 pounds. The parent will be some magnitude 10 of 10. A small woman might be 80 pounds, but some magnitude, some multiple of that. And that's pretty typical. The mother, the sourcing agent, is always larger than the offspring. Likewise, the earth, for however big the earth is about, let me see if I can find it, 1,000,000 times smaller than the sun. 1,000,000 times smaller than the sun. You can fit a lot of Earths into the sphere of the sun. And isn't it true that both the child is oriented toward the mother, particularly in the early years, and the Earth is oriented around the sun. It's constantly turning to face the sun. It orbits around the sun. It's held in place by gravity and centrifugal force in a perfect spot for us to live and for life to bloom in this particular form in this part of the universe. There's a relationship and a pattern that's set up in this area of time and space. One more thing, so we have our solar system. Let's get a little bit bigger. If the Earth was 1,000,000 times larger, which would be which might be like a pinhead compared to a basketball. Okay? The Earth to the sun, pinhead basketball. If we look at the size of our solar system relative to the Milky Way galaxy, our larger home, it's way, way, way more than, the galaxy is way more than 1,000,000 times bigger than the solar system. The illustration I found on the internet, thank God for the internet, is the size of a quarter would be the solar system compared to the distance from New York to LA. Okay? That's not even billions, that's some quadrillions or something. Huge. So why wouldn't my attention be on this aspect of myself that's larger, that's more enduring, that actually is the source of this experience that I have here in the temporal plane in time and space? Why not there? So I'm saying today, let's not just visit heaven or the state of consciousness once in a while. That's where I want to live. And from time to time, we have had that experience in a wonderful service. We rise up into this place and we come out and it's like, oh wow, it was great. And hopefully it lasts at least until we get to the end of the driveway. But rather than just visiting, live there. That's where we're going. Live in the state of divine identity. Live at the liminal edge where, I'm God and not God. We're two but not two. It's one but not one. There's a paradox in that the mind can't grasp. Thank goodness. Because if my mind could grasp it, I'd get in there and mess it up. If it could be messed up. But right on that edge, and that is where we are. There's a part of us that's always there, or else we wouldn't be sitting here talking about it. But to be there consciously. To let that sense of separation, that little part in thinking, in the self-aware state that feels and believes that it's separate, to let that begin to dissolve. It has its usefulness, that self-aware state, the ego. And I don't want to use ego as a technical term. I'm not a psychologist or psychotherapist. But the ego, in the common sense of the word, is very useful for keeping you in your body. Don't walk in front of the train. Stove might be hot. Sometimes it doesn't serve because it sees everything in those terms. Everything is a threat to my survival. And most of the time it's not. Oh, it's really important you do it my way. I'm acting as if it's a threat to my survival. It's not. The world's not going to stop turning because I let my friend, my partner, whomever, do it their way. Big deal. But it does have its usefulness, and it does have its place. It belongs in the back seat, not in the front seat driving. This path is so simple. All you have to do is follow a few simple instructions, and they come one at a time. If our intention is to actually be who we really are and take steps to practice that. So we come to the place where we think of ourselves, we identify primarily as a spiritual being having a human experience. as compared to a human being occasionally having a spiritual experience. As a spiritual being having a human experience, stuff comes up and I can step back from my anger or my sorrow or whatever it is and look at it and go, gee, Dave, that really got you going. And laugh about it. Why not? That's available. In one book, it was written to be in the world, but not of it. You have to excuse me, I grew up in a Baptist church, so I got all this Bible training, and it comes out. To be in the world, but not of it. So I'm not suggesting that we leave this life behind and go live in some airy-fairy place. In fact, I would say that when we live in true identity, we incarnate into our experience more fully than ever before, because there's nothing to be afraid of. There's nothing to do and nowhere to go. It's okay. I can fall on my face. I can stand up on a platform after not offering a service in a year and a half, and just do it. For one thing, everybody loves me. But more importantly than that, I love me. You know? It won't be the first time I've messed up, and believe me, falling down on the stage here is, believe me. That's a story for another time. But there's power and assurance in being in that place of divine identity and expressing from that place, and expressing spirit from that place. One of the things I would ask myself over the course of time is I made up these little phrases. And one is, how does the Spirit of God as David show up in this situation? And I developed the habit of asking myself that all the time. All the time. So I go to work. I used to work on construction projects. I had a career in civil engineering as an inspector and a project manager. It was wonderful. And when I was a little kid, I had my Legos and my erector set, my train set. And when I got big, I had the same thing. It was wonderful. But out on the construction site, which was notoriously a rough place, it wasn't really. They were just people trying to earn a living. Out on the construction site, how does the Spirit of God, as me, show up here when the contractor and the owner aren't getting along, when we have to negotiate change orders and all that other yucky stuff? Life became fun. How does the Spirit of God show up on the 10 items or less line and the person in front of me has 15 items? Really? Is this life-threatening? What else is going on? So there's some there's some other aspects to this statement and this question. How does the Spirit of God show up? What's here for me to do? Looking at it from God's point of view. If I want to experience the fullness of who I am, I have to step into that expression. Look at things from God's point of view. What else is going on here? What's the big picture? The interesting thing about the 10 items or less line is I've also had the experience of going into the supermarket, grabbing my 15 things, and the 10 items or less line is open, right? There's nobody there. So the person says, come on over here. So I take my 15 things on the 10 items or less line, and somebody comes in behind me and gives me the funny look. There's a big picture going on. I was invited, but where's time to explain all that? There's a bigger picture. And sometimes we know the answer and sometimes we don't. But in true identity, there's the opportunity to, as one master put it, to bring life and bring it more abundantly. And sometimes there's something to say, sometimes there's something to do, sometimes it's just holding a space. I'm told in good presentation practice, you shouldn't let there be quiet spots and all that. I don't worry about that, you know? Holding the space. Hold the space. See, follow a few simple instructions. I wasn't hearing anything, so I shut up. What a concept. Do you believe that God, through you showing up in God's Spirit from the deepest level of yourself, cannot accomplish anything? Or can accomplish anything? I'm going to make it positive. Do you believe that God expressing as you can accomplish anything? Because this is important. Because if we're going to demonstrate health, prosperity, all the things we talk about, it doesn't happen from the outer sense affecting the outer sense at the three-dimensional level. It happens because it's coming in and through me. We, my friends, are the means for God to express on earth. Going back to the biblical thing again, after the earth was made and all of this space was set, put humankind in it. Humankind decided to land there. And then God, the big undefined, rested because there was someone, one body of humanity, in place to do that work. I believe that. And my experience has begun to prove it out. And I know that's true for some of us here as we go through and do our treatments and life comes and blessing comes, prosperity comes. But it starts from that deep place. So this is essential in order to make that happen. In some sense, prosperity is simply a matter of me taking money out of one pocket of who I am and putting it in another pocket of who I am. And we'll see when the Audi shows up. Or not, but it doesn't matter because the experience is so satisfying, it kind of doesn't matter anymore. It just doesn't matter. And it works out anyway. I was on this one project way back when we were, I used to work for consulting engineering firms and big agencies like the Long Island Railroad and the New York State Department of Transportation would hand out a contract to a contractor to build a road or whatever it was they were building. And they would hire a company like the one I worked for to monitor the contractor, make sure he did it according to the specs and that it got paid the right amount at the right time and came in on time. And that's part of what I did. So on this one project, we were rehabbing railroad stations for the Long Island Railroad. And we were close to being done with this one station, and we had forgotten to put a piece of conduit and some wire in between the concrete wall and brick wall that would allow a telephone line to be run. So this is kind of a big deal because, you know, there's a lot of people looking at this, getting paid a lot of money, and we forgot this piece of conduit. So I knew the crew was out there, my inspector was out there, and I get a call at about 3:15, we knock off at 4, about 3:15, Dave, you gotta come out, we haven't done anything, it's not working, we can't get it done. Okay, why are you calling me? I'm not an electrician, I don't know how to do it. I'm an inspector, I don't do any work. So I jump in the car, and I'm a little wound up, and this is, you know, I'm a little wound up, and you know what? It was late in the afternoon, it was beautiful, the sun was shining, I let all of that go. I let it all go, and I enjoyed the beauty. Hint, note for the margins, look for beauty. If you can't find God, look for beauty. There's always something beautiful there. Always. Okay. So I'm in the car, I get down to the train station, and the foreman comes up, and my inspector come up, and they're bombing me with, oh, Dave, it's like, it's all is lost, you know. Go, all right, so, I don't know. Get on the ladder, I go up and look in the ceiling and shine the flashlight, whatever, come back down. I go inside, I climb up the other ladder, look inside. While I'm looking inside the ceiling, I hear the guy, we got it, Dave. We got it. Someone had to show up in presence, in radiance, to let what needed to happen, happen. I didn't do a thing, I just showed up. To me, that's the power of spiritual presence. Same job, different station. The superintendent, that's the fellow that's in charge of the contractor, was a nice guy in many ways, but he had a problem with telling the truth. And so we would be getting ready for a concrete pour, and there was a concrete placement, and there was, things that needed to be done, do the test and make sure it's placed properly and all of that kind of thing. And I would ask him, do you have all the equipment you need? And he'd say yes, because if he doesn't, you really can't do it. I can't allow him to do it. So I'm trying to make my life easier. I don't want to stop him and have a big fight. And time again, he'd say yes, and the fact was he really didn't, and then we had all to deal with all of this. And this used to really, really get to me, and I'd be all wound up, and I would take it home with me. And at some point, I realized, you know what? I'm going to stop doing that. And I made an extra effort to go to a scented place. I made sure I did my disciplines in the morning and in the evening before I went to bed. And then that went on for about a couple of weeks, and I found a way to interact with this fellow that I didn't accept the untruths, but I would just kind of reflect it back to him and say, listen, I know it's not true, but that's okay. Found a way to be centered in the midst of that. One Monday I come to work, the guy isn't there. What happened? He got fired. Apparently he was lying to his boss too. I didn't do a thing. But there's a reality that says, in the current of the Spirit, it makes your way straight. It goes before you and clears all this stuff out. I didn't fight with him. I stopped fighting with him. That's the magic of it. That's the power of it. So, I guess I would just say that what I'm describing is a process that's already in motion. Remember, your awakening was in process before you ever became aware of it. There was something going on way before I woke up one day and said, gee, maybe I'll read some Alan Watts. Maybe I'll look into Be Here Now. Or whatever it was I read. Jonathan Livingston Seagull. This goes back. It's a good thought. There's something that's in motion that we participate in, and in many ways don't have entire control over. But we participate in it, and it's in motion. And there are influences, galactic influences, where we are in the solar year, going around the galaxy, all kinds of stuff that make it easier more now than ever before to be in this place, to let this awakening continue. It's easier now than ever before to let the habitual ways of showing up in limitations shift into habitual ways of showing up in truth, in reality. Just takes a little bit of effort and a little bit of willingness. We keep trying. So the power of our collective activity that we experience here on a Sunday morning is amplified into the consciousness of humanity. And the thing that I know so many of us want, which is peace on earth, love between people, love, the feeling and experience of being loved ourselves, is an already present reality at the depths of being, at the depths of consciousness that is now emerging into the reality for our whole world. And I'm so glad to be able to celebrate that with you this morning. And so it is.